Hello and welcome to another Blether. Great to see the chat already flying. Good evening to everyone at home. We've got Dave Fackerson. He is having a dram tonight. He's got the Glengarry red wine cask in the glass. Is that the distillery red wine Bordeaux cask? Dave, let us know.
Also, Dave, I have seen what other Glengarry you own, and I am so jealous. It's been a week of Glengarry releases. It
has.
Yeah, that's a big one that you went off to pick up the other day there, Dave. Very excited about that.
It was last night, wasn't it?
It was Wednesday. Oh, yeah, that's last night. Yes.
It was last night, Kat. We go live every Thursday. Wednesday comes before Thursday.
It's about time they switched that up a little bit, is it not? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Same old.
Willis is watching. He has got the LBD Secret Highland. I wonder what that could be. BA. Is that the shop exclusive that we released? Because that was from a BA distillery. Willis having a little bit. So I am combining Dave's drink and Willis's drink, and I am having the LBD Glengarry release. It came out on Tuesday. And that is the starting dram for me tonight, 56.2%.
So that's a 2014.
2014. Well done.
That is very interesting. I would be interested to see what that's like next to something else that I've tried recently.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That's very interesting. I definitely need one of those in my life. I'm very excited about that.
I think we have one sitting in the shop for you. And
I know, I just have to pay for it, but I will definitely be doing that.
Who else have we got? We've got Michael Brown sitting with a Glengoyne White Oak. I haven't tried any of the Glengoyne White Oak yet, but definitely something I'm keen on. Working his way up to do 15 later.
What's a white oak? Like white oak is just American oak, or is it a different type of oak? What do you mean by white oak?
Yeah, white oak, because Glengoyne's usually got the sherry influence, but I think this is exclusively American oak.
Okay. That's cool.
So who else have we got? We've got Hamish in. Highland Hamish is watching. We've got Frank as well, who is really interested to have Greg on and looking forward to the festival and the film. Guys, if you are coming along on Saturday to watch the film and see all the guys at the festival, let us know. Let us know what bottlers you're really looking forward to meeting, and look out for Kat and I, who will be traipsing the stalls as well. And I would say buy us a dram, but you don't have to buy drams at a festival. It's they're all poured forward.
I promise not to hug anybody this time. No, I can't make that promise. I will try not to hug everybody. And Willis, I'm going to help you look after your whiskey, because I met Willis at the last festival I was at, and the poor guy had lost his whiskey, but he found it in the end.
Okay, that's funny. We've got Mark Watt on YouTube. Good evening, Mark. We will see you there. I'm building up to one of your drums later on. I'm going to have
so, Mark, if you're going to be there, I'm going to track you down, and we're going to chat all things synesthesia. And I've got a lisp, so that's actually really, really hard to say. But yeah, we've been having some really fun.
Talk about that, because you put a story out about your colours, didn't you? Which is quite cool.
Yeah, and then Mark and his wife both were telling me a bit more about it. And I remember you telling me there was somebody in whiskey that had the same thing, and I couldn't remember who you'd said it was.
Yeah.
So yeah, we definitely need to have a chat about that.
And before we bring on Greg, let's say hello to Barry. Places with Spirit on YouTube. Hello. Last week's guest is back in saying hello. But let's bring Greg on, who is now in his hotel room ahead of the premiere. We feel like we really get a little sneak peek into what goes on in the build-up to a premiere. Good evening, Greg. How are you?
Very well, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us. A little bit jumping in last minute. We are eternally grateful that you've taken some time out from entertaining some important guests you've got over in Scotland ahead of the film. So thank you so much.
Oh yeah, it's my pleasure. I'm excited to talk about it. Excited, everything's it's one day away.
I know.
I bet that. When you go.
I was going to say, you've got a pre-premiere tomorrow night with the guys who are at the festival, don't you?
Yeah, we like the people that are in the film. We're having a premiere tomorrow for them and friends and family, ahead of the festival. Then the full premiere is actually at the beginning of the festival on Saturday.
Yeah,
that's very exciting.
So this one is not actually a single film; it's 4 half-hour episodes.
Yeah.
And so we're showing tomorrow night. We're just showing the first 2, but Saturday it's the whole series,
the whole shebang.
Yeah,
excellent. And it's sold out. The film side of the festival is sold out, hasn't it?
Both are sold out. A couple hours ago, David texted me and said we're completely sold out of every single ticket, and then some.
That's amazing! Congratulations! That must feel like such an achievement. How long, start to finish, has this taken you? Like, what's the length of time to get from, thought process to, okay, this is the eve of the premiere?
I don't know if you can hear the laughter because 3 of our producers are across the room here, and they're all laughing at how long it's taken. Because to be honest with you, this whole second film was born out of Rob, our editor, and I were joking one day that we're like, we have enough footage here to make a whole. What it was actually Gordon and MacPhail. We had shot a lot of footage at Gordon and MacPhail for the first film. We didn't use nearly enough of it, and we were joking that we could make an entire other film out of it. And then it's kind of started to congeal into a real thing. And then this was all during the height of the pandemic, or maybe on the tail end of the pandemic. But I mean, that's why Guy Satchwell and I co-directed it, because I wasn't able to come to Scotland for the longest time. So I would do interviews that I could do, and he would do ones he could do. And then we also used footage that we hadn't used from the first film. We wound up using very little of the footage from the first film. It just became its own monster. So I mean, we've been working on it for about 3 years.
So you got enough footage for a third film, then, is what you're telling us.
And a fourth and a fifth. And yeah, it just keeps going.
Just be like Lord of the Rings and just keep churning it out forevermore. Just make sure the ending's better than Lord of the Rings, because that went on for way too long.
Well, as long as there's more whiskey stories to be told, I don't think we'll have any problem.
And it comes in pints. That would be good. Because you've called this one Independent Spirits a whiskey series. So is that a whiskey series, and that this is 4 episodes that wraps up this movie, or it's a series that there's going to be more? So it's these 4 episodes together.
Yeah, it's the Water of Life presents the Independent Spirits, and we didn't want to call it Independent Bottlers because I think the general public maybe wouldn't know what that meant. So Independent Spirits had a bit of a double meaning, so we liked that, and this is the extent of that series. I think there's some other whiskeys around the world that we might go farther afield than Scotland for the next ones.
I think that that's probably a good shout. You should probably look for the most exotic locations and insist on filming in some beautiful sunny places. I would insist on it.
Well, it's funny. I was in the Bon Accord in Glasgow 2 nights ago, and completely by coincidence met a bunch of the owners of Inverurie, the Indian single malt, who were in at the moment. Yeah,
no way.
That was serendipitous, I think, to say the least.
It is strange how you get these little moments, isn't it? Because the whiskey community is really, really small, and it's when you start chatting to people, you're only like 2 or 3 people away from somebody that knows somebody that works on whiskey, especially in Scotland. But yeah, meeting, I guess, the crew from an Indian distillery in Glasgow is maybe not your most obvious accidental.
I love that about Glasgow, the Pot Still and the Bon Accord. And you go in there and you think, I'll just go and have a dram, and then you meet people who are like in our industry world famous, and you end up having a dram with them and chatting, and it's incredible. It's a great experience. And these are guys who, to Joe public are kind of anonymous, but to the whiskey community, they're rock stars. And then you always get a little buzz when you're speaking to them.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because with the first film, we spent so much time with Jim McEwen, and and in the whiskey world, it's like hanging out with Bono, but in the regular world, it's not.
I think Jim McEwen's he's retired more times than Bono, hasn't he?
We were in we followed him to Australia for the first film, and when our Alphonse and I were leaving Australia in the duty free in Brisbane, they were like, "Oh, the man." We were looking at some Bruichladdich whiskeys, and the guy at the counter said, "Oh, the man that made that whiskey was in here a few days ago," and we just played dumb, But he was sort of hyping him up, and because his picture was on the tin and everything.
Excellent, I love it. So in terms of what's the main difference? Because we had the Water of Life, the story of the whiskey, which kind of really, I don't think it was deliberate at the start, was it? The plan wasn't to focus so much on Jim. It's just that you kind of got encapsulated with his story, and it kind of became more about him than it probably original. Was the seed planted then for that? This is not just a one-off movie, or was it afterwards in the editing floor when you thought, we've got so much here? Did you think beforehand that?
I think with the original idea, you're right. The original idea was to pick 6 distilleries around Scotland that kind of represented a cross section of Scotland. An Islay distillery, a Highland distillery, a Speyside distillery, a new one, an old one, a little one, a big one, that kind of thing, and just to get a good cross section. But the Bruichladdich story was just so interesting from a storytelling standpoint, just because they were kind of nuts and they were broke, and there was a lot of drama baked into it. And some brands, it doesn't have anything to do with the quality of the whiskey. It just means some of the brands just don't have a really dramatic story. Like Balvenie has never closed, never changed hands, never been bankrupt. And so
boring. Yeah.
So we just kind of leaned into the more interesting story, and then I think then we kind of started to get ambitious because we're all filmmakers, but we're all also serious whiskey geeks. So like we're our own audience, and I think that there was a real sense of like, there's more stories to be told here. And then people started writing to us with ideas for stories.
Excellent.
It's fantastic as well, though, because like so much of these distilleries, they're part of our social history. So like any sort of documented archive of these stories. Because I was thinking, some of the kind of proper legends in the industry, we get told these stories and they go from mouth to mouth, and they get traded about the place. But to actually have that in a sort of film sense, like a sort of permanent sort of archive of these stories, it's really quite important as well to have that. Because once these people are gone, not that I'm sure they'll live healthy for the next good while. But once they're gone, that's it. Like we've kind of lost those moments. So I mean, it must feel like it's something important you're doing as well as fun. It's obviously definitely relative to the industry.
Absolutely. And I think that the opportunity to be one of the sort of stewards of those stories was like a privilege, really. And I was amazed at how open and generous everyone was with that. No one said no to it. Not a single distillery said no to us. I mean, some were clearly more interested than others, and some were a bit overly formal. It's like here's a press packet, that sort of thing, as opposed to Bruichladdich was like, whatever you want.
Yeah, I guess that's down to the owners, and because if they're owned by a conglomerate or something, they have their values and they have their set ways. It's a little bit different to knocking on an independently owned, where you one guy makes a decision and they say, yeah, and you come or not.
Yeah, absolutely. And now it's different. Now I'm not nervous right now, but I should be, because the first time we made the first film, nobody knew anything about what we were doing. We were just sort of doing it. Now like the screening, right? It's like that's the industry. Like a huge swath of the industry is going to be there.
Yeah.
So hopefully we won't let them down.
I'm sure you won't. We've got Mark. Just put a comment on Mark Waters saying the classic: how do you get people to like your whiskey? You close your distillery.
Speaking of, I was at Rosebank today. So
there we go. Yeah, nice tie-in.
Is that what's in your glass?
This is actually the Glengoyne that I got at the Rosebank. The Rosebank is gone that we drank at that distillery. So.
Great. Willis has just put a comment up on Facebook, so we will address this. He's asking what platform will the films be released and when. I think this would be a great time to put the link up, will we?
Absolutely. So I think that the first step is we're going to do this festival, and that's the only place it's going to be. And the same day, it's going to become for sale online, and people will be able to buy the whole series online if they want on our website, which is the link you put up. And then we're going to do a number of other theatrical screenings. Both we're going to Germany, and then we're also, I think, going to Florida and a few other places to do some other theatrical screenings. And then after that, we'll eventually be on all of the what in the industry they call TVOD, the transactional video on demand, which basically means like Apple, Amazon Prime, Google Play, Microsoft. There's a couple that are in the States that I don't think are out around the world. There's Canopy, which is a public library streaming platform. If you have a library card, you can get free movies and stuff, which that's the best thing for us because we get paid, but you don't have to, the people doing it don't have to pay for it, but yeah, it'll be on all those places. And one of the things that we're doing a lot of, we did it later in the stages of the Water of Life, is it was on a lot of airlines as well. And it became very popular on a lot of in-flight entertainment.
That's amazing. That's so cool.
And I also think we'll probably eventually do some Blu-rays, because we discovered that Blu-rays at least are quite popular in Germany, which is a big whiskey market.
Really?
I think people like to get collectibles, especially at like a festival or things. Yeah. If they're going to meet the people, I think they like the physical media.
Yeah. That does make a big, it's like people who like CDs or vinyl probably more. They want the album. You can listen to it Spotify on your phone, but there's nothing better than the experience of putting it on the player and setting the TV up and sitting back and pressing play. Yeah,
and we sold a bunch in Germany, and we autographed them, and and we autographed posters and stuff like that. And, people had me autographing bottles of whiskey, which every time I did it, I said yes, but I pointed out to them that I did not make that whiskey.
I'm gonna have to I'm gonna have to bring my autograph book down on Saturday. I'm gonna have to purchase an autograph book and bring it down and get some autographs. That's very cool. It does actually feel like it's like, I don't know if I said this to you before we went on air, but it almost feels like like one of those correspondents that's on like the red carpet asking inane questions to you while you're just trying to get into the film premiere. It is very, very exciting that we've literally nailed you down just before this film goes live to the world for the first time. It's very cool. And it's going to be such an amazing group of people together watching it as well, which must be like a little bit scary, but also a lot of fun that you just have all these kind of whiskey geeks around about you, kind of watching your work for the first time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure I'll be nervous. Like I said, not so much on Saturday. Saturday, I can just, hide my nerves behind drams. but when you were when we were going live here, I was watching the opening titles with the montage of people, and I was like, oh, she's going to be there. He's going to be there. He's going to be there. She's going to be there. I was like, uh-oh. It's like starting to become real.
How did you find working and speaking to independent bottlers against speaking to the distilleries? Was it a vast difference between the kind of stories that they were telling, or?
Yes, because you know what there's no marketing executive telling them not to tell a certain story.
They tell it their way, don't they?
There's no one off camera trying to keep them on topic. They can, and in some of them, Mark Watt is a perfect example. He's throughout the film because he's a great interview because he's very outspoken and funny, and so.
What rating is the movie? Is it 18 plus? Just
it's funny. We haven't submitted it for any kind of rating yet. But I'm trying to think if there's any profanity. Is there profanity?
Beginning of episode 4, it's Mitch.
Oh yeah. Mitch Betchard. Mitch Betchard's going to put us up into the 18 plus.
Does he drop an F-bomb? He's quite a fan of bad language on his podcast.
Yeah.
It's because he's one of the cool kids. He gets away with dropping the odd F-bomb here and there.
Yeah.
So, like, if you are having this one screened on like an airplane, does it need to have like a rating on it? But, you know, because like
Yeah.
if kids would. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. So Mitch has just literally kind of ruined things for you. He's boxed it all up with his potty mouth.
No, we can. We did it with the first film. You know, it's funny. One of the things we realized is there were two ways you can either beep someone out or you can just drop out the sound altogether. But what we realized is if you drop them out altogether, people don't notice. If you beep them, it's funny.
Yeah.
So we went with the beeps because it was just funnier. You know, may I swear on this podcast?
Please do, because I do all the time.
Well, because in the first film, you know, Mark Renier tells the story about the guy at the gates of Bricklotty telling him to fuck off.
Yeah.
And that's an important moment in the film. And if we dropped that out, it would basically just be the guy said, "Can I come in?" And he said no. But if he says no, beep, you know, then it's funny.
Yeah.
Scottish people can swear. It's in such a conversational way as well. I mean, it wouldn't really be a true reflection of Scottish stories if there wasn't somebody there just swearing, to be honest. It's like, it's just what we do.
Wasn't it Billy Connolly said that fuck is the most poetic word in the English language?
I saw that. Jesus suffering fuck. Yeah.
It's amazing. Yeah. But it has to be used, you know, in context. It's not just the case of throwing it out there.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there was a lot of editing because, you know, especially if guys like Mitch and Mark have had a dram during the interview process, it slips out probably a lot more than it would.
But
we're not going to talk about swearing too much. We'll move on.
You know, I will tell you that one of the things that made us not care that much about most of the broadcast stuff was because the topic is about alcohol. So in a lot of countries, you can't even market to people under 25 anyway. So, you know.
If at all.
Yeah.
We had the Bifrost guys on a couple of weeks ago, and they're not allowed to advertise alcohol at all. So
even at their distillery, which is making alcohol, it's mental, isn't it? But yeah. Different rules, different countries. Fantastic. So while we're talking about people we know, Neil Strachan has just pinged me a message to say hello to you, Greg. So there you go. I've done my duty, Neil. If you're watching,
I always use a story Neil told at a tasting I went to once. I tell people all the time. It's a go-to.
Really, because I had him on the Blether a couple of weeks ago, and he told some crackers of stories. We were a fair few drams in, so I don't know if he intended to tell them or not, but he's got some good stories.
Well, this wasn't so much a story as it was a tip. He said, if you're at your first whiskey tasting and you think you're in way over your head and you're afraid you're going to seem like an idiot, just talk about vanilla and honey, and everyone will think you're smart.
100%. Do you know? So I tell when I'm training staff to do tastings, because the tastings are like actually the really scary part, like learning a script and talking about production. You know, anybody can do that, well, within reason, you know. But like the tasting is like a little bit more personal, and I always say to people, do you know what? Like if all you want to talk about is vanilla honey, like you're not wrong. It's one thing people are going to agree with you with, so stick to it. So yeah, I totally agree with that, 100%.
We use the same advice to our guests at a tasting. We kind of say, you know, if somebody mentions there's American oak or bourbon cask, be the first person in the room, put your hand up and say, "Oh, I get vanilla or caramel," and then the host will stop picking on you. Well, okay, that guy knows a little bit, and you said your piece, so nobody's going to pick on you. So yeah, it's a good tip for the guys. I mean, most of the people watching will be beyond that level of throwing a vanilla in there in a tasting, I'm sure. Just touching on what we were talking about there, Jeremy Watts come in. He's on Facebook. He's asked, would you have or do you foresee any issues with the film being viewed in some countries due to that alcohol advertising restriction?
The only issues we had, it was with the first film, where we were trying to do some advertising. We were trying to do promoted posts and stuff on Facebook. And like in Sweden, we just weren't allowed. You know, it would just get rejected automatically. I think in the UK, or maybe, I think it was UK and Ireland. But both of those, we had to set like really high age gates on them. You know, like you had to be, it would only appeal, like target people that were 28 or something like that and up. But other than that, no.
Cool. Because it's not really advertising, is it? It's education.
Right. Yeah, yeah, no, it's they're both true documentaries. We didn't get paid by distilleries or bottlers or anything. That was, you know, we could have probably gone that route with the first film. I mean, there were plenty of distilleries that we probably could have gotten to pay for the film and basically make branded content, but we didn't really want to do that. And I don't even think that was an option. I don't think there's independent bottlers out there that have marketing budgets to pay for feature films.
I think the people are the budget, aren't they?
It's sort of interesting to focus on independent bottlers as well, because I was chatting to I was like literally explaining what an independent bottler was to somebody that had come into work, because obviously I work in a distillery. I mention it every single week. But they'd bought a bottle of Glengarry, they tried it in a bar in the US somewhere, and they're like, oh, do you have this? And it had been released independently. I don't know who'd done it. I don't know if it was the bar that done it, or it wasn't a name that I recognised. But they just couldn't get their head around the fact that, distilleries would be okay with a company taking their whiskey and putting their own independent label on it. And, they're like, isn't there laws against that? Isn't that, like trading standards and stuff? And I was trying to explain it. Actually, it's a quite common thing. It's, it's a good thing. But there's still a lot of lack of knowledge, or, maybe lack of understanding about what independent bottlers are and what they do.
That was the impulse for the whole film. I mean, that was literally the whole idea, was to because for the longest time, I could not find any kind of metaphor that would explain to someone for another business, like another trade. And there is one that's in the film. I don't want to ruin it. I don't want to give it. It's actually the opening scene of the film. But I will tell you one that's not in the film that I used to use, which is, there's like aftermarket car companies that will, you could buy AMG Mercedes, and they were like a trusted partner of Mercedes-Benz that would do these. Now I know Mercedes has now bought AMG, and now it's just basically, but for the longest time, they were an independent trusted partner. And in the States, there's one called Saleen that does Ford. They make Ford Mustangs that are like super high-end ones. So they're basically taking the base product and making it their own, and they put both brands on it, and so that was the closest I could ever come. Other people gave us other metaphors, but they always fell apart. Like someone said to us, like bootleg records. And some of the bottlers were like, no, that's illegal. We don't steal whiskey and then sell it.
Yeah, you're right. Because, I think if I was put in the spot, I wouldn't be able to come up with an analogy of who else does something similar, who else takes a product and then puts a different label on it, but still releases it as the original product. It is quite unique. And it's really hard to explain because, if you're just used to it, it's not until somebody actually questions it and says, why? Like, why would you do that? Why is that a good thing? But so now I could just recommend the 4-part docuseries to them and say, do you know what? Get on to your streaming platform and watch this docu-film, and you'll know all about independent bottlers by the end of it. But yeah.
I will tell you the one. I'm not going to give the metaphor away because, like I said, it's in the very beginning of the film and it's good. But I will tell you this: we interviewed this guy, and I asked every one of them a question, explain what an independent bottler is. And about a week later, he called me and he said, "I have a better answer." So we literally had to kind of throw together a way to shoot him one more time, like just to get this. And his answer was great. So it was worth it. But it was, even that took a week to come up with.
Do you know what, though? It's always the way when somebody asks you a question on the spot, especially if you're being filmed for something, and you kind of come away with an answer, and then like about a week later, or if you're in an argument with somebody, and then about a week later, like the best retort will come into your head. You're like, bollocks, if only I'd said that at the time. So, it's great to go back in contact with you, and you're like, yeah, no, okay, that's much better.
It's just not the same in a text a week after the argument, is it?
Yeah.
It's really not.
Mark's saying we would steal it if we could. Back to the bootlegging. And Dave Powley saying he does the same explaining in the shop with independent bottlers. The unique cask often makes it more sellable. And yeah, we kind of, there's kind of a double-edged sword a little bit, especially when maybe something like from What Whiskey, we've got an Orkney distillery. So we know what Orkney distillery is. But if somebody comes in looking for a bottle for their granddad, and they know the granddad likes Highland Park, they want to see Highland Park on the label. Because there's that comfort zone in that distillery bottle, and there's that comfort zone. So we to try and explain them, this is something unique. This is something single. This is, it is Highland Park. We just can't put the name on it. And that's Dave. We have exactly the same. Trying to explain that it's unique. It's the sellable product that in all but name. But quite often, it does have the name on it. You'll see a lot of distilleries are quite happy to to explain what the name is. Yeah, I mean,
there's a whole section in the film about that too, about the naming bit. I was just talking with Mike Brown about that today, because there's a distillery he might have a professional attachment with, might be the reference that is explained in.
All right. And he has asked us to ask you, how is the Glen going?
It is gone. So
It's gone.
I'll let you can read into that what you will.
And I know your own podcast video series is called Big Man We Dram.
Yeah,
and you're not that big that's a full size Glencairn, are you? That's
no. This is not
I mean, meet you in person and you're like Hagrid.
Yeah. No, I'm pretty close. I'm 6'6".
6'6".
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to shout that. That's just really tall.
This is just a little tiny the wee tasting glass.
It does look really small in your hand, actually. Yeah.
Although the Glengoyne was great, but it was gone before. It would have been gone whatever it was. But we had some amazing whiskeys at Rosebank today. I'm here in addition to being here for this. What we did is we've done a couple of these tours with an American company that does whiskey tours of Scotland, and they've been kind of designing tours around our films. The first two was about that we did with when we're about the first film, and then this is now people have come over and we're doing a little mini tour, and then they're going to the premiere and the festival on Saturday.
Wow. I can't think of Glengoyne without thinking of one of the most stupid things I've ever said to somebody by accident. I was at a travel and tourism conference, and there was a couple of different distilleries there. And there was a lady I got chatting to who was talking about Glengoyne. You know, when you've just been talking all day and your brain just starts disconnecting from your mouth. And I'd said to her, "Oh my God, Glengoyne, I love your packaging. I love your branding. I love all the goose leaves that you have on your boxes." And she's like, yeah. Do you mean feathers? I'm like, yes. Not goose leaves, obviously. Feathers.
I like that. And when you first said it, it didn't hit my ear as as wrong. It took a second. It felt okay.
I know, right? We should just all change it to goose leaves. It's a much nicer expression. But yeah, it's very, very, very nice whiskey. I'd love to go and visit it. Actually, it's on my hit list of places to go and visit. I'll need to go and.
I have not. I've never been to Glengoyne, despite it being pretty easy to get to. Compared to some of the more far afield ones. But I've not made it. No, not yet.
You're going to have to come back over when you're not at a premiere of a film and start ticking off some of these distilleries you haven't done, like Glengeely, for example. Just throw other ones out there.
Speaking of which, I heard you say at the beginning that's what you were drinking, that Little Brown Dog Glengeely. I had that 2 days ago at the Artisan. It had just come out. I think Chef Derek here is in the chat. I saw, and he had just gotten it in that day.
Amazing. It's very exciting. It's taken them 7 years to release a whiskey that's the closest one to their distillery, but we're not going to hold that against them. They're just saving it, best. You need to give it time, build up to it. But they've released a really cool video.
They did, and keep your eyes peeled for what Little Brown Dog are releasing, because there's some cool stuff coming as well. We've got Jeremy is saying Glengoyne was his first distillery.
Oh, nice.
Which is quite cool. Jeremy is our kind of encyclopedia of whiskey viewer. There's not much in the annals of whiskey that Jeremy won't pop up with an answer to, which is quite cool. He lives over in Norway now, but he's from Stonehaven or Portlethen, I think, originally, down on the East Coast. Keith is saying, "Kat, you need a step ladder for a cuddle with Greg." So we're going to have to take a step ladder down with us on Saturday. And Michael is saying the invite is always there to Glengoyne. So we'll have to make another trip
Yeah,
There-
honestly, if you invite me places, I will just turn up. Like, you know,
Fair enough.
I don't just see that as a polite, oh yeah, come sometime. I will be there. So it's in writing.
Hopefully, Michael, are you going to be at the premiere? Are you going to be at the festival? If so, let's have a chat. We'll give you our brand new Blether business cards, which we have.
I'm so excited about this.
Do I have one? I probably don't.
Are you sitting on them?
I
hope
thought they
it's
were
just
my
you.
back pocket.
If you've got my face underneath your ass just now, I'm not going to be very impressed.
I know. There we go. That is these cards. So if you see us, grab a Blether card from us. We might do a prize. Grab a Blether card, and every 10th person will.
And I will give you a hug.
Yeah.
I will hug you.
You literally just said about 10 minutes ago that you're not going to do hugs, and now you're giving them out as prizes.
Do you know what? As soon as I have a whiskey, I'm hugging anybody that goes near me. We know what's going to happen. So I'm just really excited about this festival. It sounds like I've been looking at everybody that's going to it. It just looks like it's going to be a great, great lineup of folk.
Yeah.
There's the film features. To be honest with you, I've lost count, but I think it's 49 different bottlers, and the festival kind of mirrors that. There are some at the festival that are not in the film, and vice versa. But for the most part, they're roughly the same numbers. We kept adding and adding and adding until finally there was going to be a mutiny if I kept adding more stuff. I think. And then and then the other day I was like, oh wait. What I went to a woven tasting, and that's why I was at the Bon Accord, and I was like, we didn't include woven we didn't not include anyone for any reason other than we didn't know someone there. That was the truth. It was just a matter of who we met and when.
In your defense, we had Peter on, who's the blender for woven, and they don't describe themselves as independent bottlers. They're blenders. So you've dodged bullet. You can say you did your due diligence, and you thought, well, we didn't want to paint you with that brush because you didn't want to be so.
Gordon and MacPhail won't call themselves independent bottlers either, and the Scotch Malt Whisky Society kind of pushed back against that term too, but we just kind of ignored that.
Independent spirits, didn't you?
Yeah, independent whiskey makers. That's what Gordon MacPhail said. We're independent whiskey makers.
Okay.
Okay, fine.
And I guess the difference with Gordon MacPhail is that they're looking after the casks from start to finish, aren't they? They're not buying casks that are of a certain age, so they have their own cask management system from spirit to release, don't they? And that's quite unique. There are a couple who do it, but not on the scale, I guess, as Gordon MacPhail.
True, yeah.
That's interesting.
Was there? Sorry, crack on.
No, on you go. It's fine.
I was just going to ask, Greg, was there any particular insights into the independent bottling world that really kind of surprised you or opened your eyes to something that you could talk about that's not going to spoil the movie?
There's probably a million little ones, but I'll tell you one that comes to mind. It's kind of arcane, but I live in California, so I benefit from this as opposed to suffering from it. But one of the things that we learned about the way independent bottlers are distributed in the U.S. is a lot of them are imported into the state of California. But then what we learned was a lot of them will sell out within California. So why would anyone have any incentive to ship them to Chicago or Boston or something or Miami if you're going to sell them out without having to put them on a train or a truck for a week? So there's an embarrassment of riches of really amazing independent bottlings in California, to the detriment of many other states, which I would care about if I lived in one of the other states, but I don't. So,
you're on the winning side.
Yeah, it's like I was opposed to the drinking age being 21 until the day I turned 21, at which point I ceased to care.
And then you really want people to ID you, don't you? You want to be asked for your ID when you turn legal age. It's like, and that's always the fun bit.
It is. I always find it really interesting though about the US, and it's almost like a different country. Like each state's like a different country because you've got such different rules about like buying alcohol, consumption of alcohol, importing alcohol. Like it's a bit of a minefield if you were, driving from one state to another and you wanted to go and get a bottle of wine for like your grandmother or something. Like, I guess you just have to plan ahead, but like in our heads in the UK, it just seems like a crazy notion. But I guess it's just way of life with you guys, I suppose. You get used to what you know.
Yeah, and it's, some states are just really complicated, including I'm from Pennsylvania, and Pennsylvania is definitely top 3 of the most annoying, complicated, and as a result, lack of selection, lack of good prices, lack of new stuff ever. And so, all along, I grew up relatively close to the border with Maryland. And if you go across the border with Maryland, every town has like 10 liquor stores because people from Pennsylvania drive like,
Right,
it's maybe 5 minutes away.
Yeah.
And
I know the single malt in America and the bourbon there's a lot of craft movement, isn't there? There's a lot of small distilleries, but they're only producing enough for their own state because, one, the state is big enough. It's like the population of a European country in its own right. And the laws of exporting it is just, for the scale of their production, they're quite happy. You know what? We've got 10 million people in our state or 20 million people in our state where that's big enough for us. And then some. So even the American distilleries aren't distributing out with their own state.
Yeah, for sure. And now that single malt is a category, and that has kind of led to a bunch of new ones popping up, and we'll see what kind of distribution they get, if they even, like you said, there might not even really be an incentive to pursue that distribution. If I make X amount of whiskey and I can sell X amount of whiskey in my state, why would I go anywhere else?
Yeah. Are you finding the US market for craft distilling is quite loyal to their own state or their own town? We had a similar thing with gin in the UK, where every town had its own gin produced, and people were quite loyal to it. They come in looking for the local gin. Is that a trend that's happening in America?
Not that I know of. No, I mean, maybe to some degree. To be honest with you, I could see that being the case in Kentucky, maybe. With a lot of the bourbon brands, but not that I know of. I mean, California there's so many. Most of the Californians I know are transplants from other states, so they've already kind of broken that idea of, I do not look for California whiskey. I do not look for Pennsylvania whiskey. And it wouldn't make me more or less likely to buy it. And I'm only using myself as an example, but I mean, my favorite American single malt that I've had so far is Westland, and that's from Seattle. I mean, and so, that I have a lot of Westland, and it has nothing to do in my mind with whether I like or don't like Seattle.
Yeah.
I do happen to like Seattle, and I think, but it had nothing to do with it. So I think it's flavor driven.
Yeah. Willis was asking if there's any independent bottling with American bourbon whiskey. So I think he means like Scottish independent bottlers releasing American whiskey. Is that what he means? I think it's what he means.
I think he's meaning, is there
American
in America, or is it a Little Brown Dog of America buying casks of bourbon?
There's a few, and we feature one which is called Lost Lantern, and they explain in the film that basically they're using the Scottish model of independent bottling, but they're only bottling American whiskeys. And there's a couple of other ones that are doing some interesting things, not even American necessarily, but there's some world whiskey stuff. But Lost Lantern is sort of using they're unapologetically fans of like Adelphi, and sort of using that as a business model or kind of a guidepost of how to do what they've been doing. And I think that they've met with a lot of open doors because no one's going to these smaller distilleries and asking them for casks. So
yeah. And I guess you've got the restrictions of the state as well in there. If you're an indie bottler, you'd kind of almost be limited to the distilleries in your state without jumping through hoops and red tape.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. One of the things, Nora is the co-owner of. It's a husband and wife team that own Lost Lantern, and Nora is the one who Nora Ganley Roper is interviewed in the film, and she talks about that a little. Well, no, I'm sorry. She talked about this not in the film, but she talked about it with me while we were shooting her. She was saying that it's always been interesting to her that there are no regional distinctions of whiskey in the U.S. Or in Canada, which is even bigger. There's Canadian whiskey, but people don't talk about, there's Calgary whiskey, or there's, oh, that's an Ontario whiskey, or, you know, they might say where they're from, but there's no expected flavor profile that goes with a region. You know what I mean? Like Balcones has a style, but no one would say, oh, that's Texas style. That's just a style that's from Texas. You know, but the other distilleries in Texas might have nothing to do with that style. And she was curious about, you know, trying to develop that, some kind of regional expectation of, you know, I know it's broken all the time. I know it's not what it used to be, and it probably should be that way. But I know, like, when you say Islay, people know, oh, that's a type of whiskey. And I realize that there are plenty of Islay whiskeys that aren't that, but it still brings to mind a regionality.
The most common kind of comment would be have people coming into the shop say, you know, oh, he doesn't like, or she doesn't like the Islay whiskies, meaning they don't like peated whiskey, but they you know, they have in their head that Islay means peat. So sometimes we chuck in a Bruichladdich just to throw them off the scent a wee bit. When I haven't, but I think regional is a little bit archaic now. Are distilleries too diverse with peated Speyside and unpeated Islas and everything in between? I think kind of flavor and cask is more important to people than a region. Yeah,
I think right.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree with that. I don't think the cask should be the most important thing at all. I think definitely the new make spirit should definitely be what does all the talking. But I still think, like, in terms of like regionality, there's still like that little bit of like magic that you can't quite explain, like that terroir kind of magic. Because like with the US, for example, like because it's so diverse, like parts of it are so different. You can go from like, you know, snowy like winter wonderlands to like desert kind of states. So there must be some sort of climatic influence there, which leads to a type of style. Even if it's psychological, that still influences taste and perception of taste as well. Because, you know, people associate like the Highlands with like sort of a bit more of a robust whiskey, the Speyside with a lighter floral style. Even if that's already in your head, you're already looking for that before. It's like an unconscious bias, isn't it? So there is like a little bit, I do believe there is still some elements of like influence the region. I'm just surprised the US hasn't. And now you say that, I'm like, yeah, you're right. The US doesn't have any sort of like definition by region or anything like that. But I don't know. I think there is still some magic in the romance of regions a little bit, even if it's maybe not as pronounced as it used to be.
You know, I think it depends too where the grain would come from. I mean, there's only certain parts of the U.S. where you could grow barley. You know, you're not going to grow barley in Florida. You know, you're not going to grow barley in Arizona. Maybe, probably not very well. I don't know. We were doing an event last year in Victoria Island. In Canada, there's a great whiskey festival there, which is a bit of a feeding frenzy of a whiskey festival. And they, one of the brand ambassador from Bruichladdich was with us, and he had just done a tour of Victoria Island that day. And he said that one of the things they told him on the tour was that Victoria Island, not BC, but Victoria Island was the exact same size as Scotland.
Really?
And I mean, because Canada's just stunningly huge. I mean, just huge. And you know, and he was talking about regionality of whiskey flavors and stuff, and he's like, this island that we're on that no one even knows about is the size of Scotland.
That's mad.
It's mostly trees.
So that's it. It's kind of like the Highlands of Scotland, isn't it? It's so vast, but population wise it's very sporadic, sparse. I'm going to have to run in a second, but like I said, a part of our production team is here, and I'm happy to replace myself with someone if you'd like to chat with someone else you don't know.
But
You're
we'd be more than happy. Yeah, exactly.
Well, our producer Nate Barlow is sitting next to me, so I'll let him replace me. But I'm sorry that I have to go, but we have a Discord group that I have to sort of attend to.
Not at all. Thank you so much, Greg. Look forward to meeting you on Saturday.
Me too. And I will. I will. You know, you'll find me because, like I said, I'm 6'6".
Thanks, Greg.
Take care.
Hi, I'm not quite as tall as Greg. I'm only 6'1", so it might be a little more difficult.
We're going down slightly. Once we get to the person that's 5'2", they'll be in the same wavelength as me.
So,
Hi,
so
how are you?
Thank you for joining us.
hi, Nate. Thanks very much for jumping in. You haven't quite adjusted to the Scottish weather. You're still wearing your scarf.
It's just kind of fun. I don't get to wear it back in Los Angeles because it's the high here right now is. I mean, occasionally we get a little bit lower, but still about our absolute low most of the time. So it's just fun to wear it when I can. And it
It's
is
fun to
a
wear scarf.
genuine Scottish scarf I bought on my last trip here. So
It's a good, and the flat cap as well. I kind of feel like I should go and find my flat cap because we've got like a little flat cap party on the go there. I'm gonna have to go and get
You're
mine.
off brand, Kat. You're off brand.
So off brand. I'll have to go and sort that out. Can't beat a flat cap.
So Nate, tell us a little bit about your role within the Water of Life team, or the Independent Spirits team.
Well, I'm one of the producers, and I'm also on the series. I'm a story editor. So I've been, since we started looking at all the footage, because Guy was sent, as Greg mentioned, was shooting it during the pandemic, and when Greg couldn't get over, Greg and I, God, how many months now? I feel like it's been a year and a half since we really started sitting down and just watching all of it, and time flies, right? So from that very get-go, and we started to map out, what we thought the story would be, and then, we started, and before we started working for our editing team. So, Greg and I, even we've been go back beyond Water of Life. Even we've been working together for our first film together was started in January 1998. So we've worked together a long time.
Yeah. Cool.
That must be quite a daunting process. You've got all this like footage and stories and trying to sift through that and decide watch this, what format you're going to put it in and what stays and what goes. I mean, that must be quite, I guess the more you watch things as well, the more used to it you get. I don't know, what is that process? How do you do that? It just seems like a lot.
I mean, you can just read transcripts, but it doesn't quite. I would never has the same feeling with actually hearing the person say it. Though, I can, if I read any of the transcripts now, I just picture it. I don't need to. Yeah. I can picture the person. I can picture every single thing about that particular interview. So it's almost seamless. But yeah, it's a lot of footage when you get 20, 30 different interviews, and you're just looking at those list of files like, oh my gosh, and you're gonna watch all that and realize, each one's going to be, they vary in length, but you can say maybe an hour. So, just, the initial watch down is a lot to absorb. Yeah. And, but, you start to see, okay, the connections. You say, oh, this person said this, and you see how this relates to this immediately. And you're starting to build, before you write down anything in terms of what, you think will be the overall story, you start to build, you can hear themes coming through, and you start to build that in your head before you start writing down, okay, this is where it's going to go.
Yeah. Kind of like putting a jigsaw together without the box, isn't it? And then as you start to find edges and corners, and then maybe a character, you can put them together, and then all of a sudden you've got this bigger picture.
Absolutely. I mean, with narrative film, they say, it's written 3 times. It's, when the writer writes it, then when you do, on set, when you're shooting it, and then in the editing room. But documentaries are ever more so. It's about the editing room. I mean, it's all about when you're putting it together in post-production.
I guess you have to be so much more flexible for a documentary, because on a movie you've got the script. Yeah, the script can change, but you know what the end game is. You know what the start is, and the conflict in the middle, which tells the story. That linear kind of process. But a documentary, you find out things on set, and during interviews, you're like, whoa, right, that needs investigated. We need to go and interview this guy again, and let's go speak to her again. And there's not really an end game in sight.
It's very fluid.
Or is there?
It's very fluid. I mean, you have an end game, but at any given moment, any new piece can say, "Oh, I need to go." Yeah, as you said, I need to go in that direction. Sometimes it'll be something like where you realize you've built something to a certain extent. It's just too much. It's almost it's its own thing. And it would be too divergent, too much of a tangent to go into it. But if it expands on something where it fits in, you're like, oh, I need to add this. And yeah, you have to be fluid. You cannot have, I won't say there aren't some documentaries where you can have a more rigid view, because I've done them, but it's not this style of documentary. For sure. It's a living document, basically. And so you have to be flexible and realize, oh, no matter what you thought, if this needs to be there, it needs to be developed, you need to go follow the story. And I would say that's probably the case of most documentaries. That's the case. There are some where you can, and I would think those tend to be very historically based, because obviously the perspective is not going to change much. But majority, especially if they're contemporary, are you have to be fluid.
100%. My first career choice was filmmaking. I went to college and did media studies and trained on that. Set up a business doing wedding movies. That was my first business, was doing wedding DVDs and videos. And it was the editing of these that kind of pulled me away from the passion for it. And it's the same for whiskey. I love the research. I love the practical side of it. I love the people, but the paperwork and the back end of it is the bit that, but watching that same best man speech over and over and over to time it, the jokes become unfunny, and you start to think, and what I'm trying to get at is, when you watch something, you must have watched hundreds, thousands of hours of footage time and time again. Did you get to the point where you're like, is this bit important to the narrative? How do you decide, right, I've heard this so many times. How do you look at that with a fresh approach and say, no, this is vital, we need to keep this in, or I've listened to this guy say the same sentence 500 times, can we not just get rid of it?
I don't think quite the latter bit. I mean, with so many different interviews, it was, we had a team of editors working on this, and Rob, who's here as editor, and who's supervising editor and one of the producers, overseeing them. But sometimes with that team and the different episodes that each team was working on, they would find something that had just been overlooked. When we said, go in this direction of this, and we'd be like, what was that one before? And there's so much, because as a narrative, you have that script at the basis, as you're saying, and kind of the bits. Maybe it's different, shot selection. You get your close up, your two shot, your medium, and you want to go. But here, there's, sometimes it is tough to keep all of it in your head, and sometimes something that you haven't heard will actually, or you've only heard a couple times, will be suddenly be fresh in that way. I mean, I do, Life, with Water of Life, the first film, what's come down to is I've seen so many different cuts, and it will be this too, that at times I forget what's actually in the final cut. Like, I thought we cut that scene, or that we did that scene, because you've seen so many different, and you've that you start to, you can get to the point where you actually forget which pieces actually made it in. Makes sense when you're watching it, but you're like, oh, especially if it's been a little while afterwards, because you've seen so many variants. I mean, and it can be minor tweaks, but you start to see so many different. It can get to the point where it almost blurs together.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I was at work at my other distillery, and we had a Japanese documentary film crew over filming the distillery, and it was just so interesting to see, like, some bits they would just do over and over and over, and they wanted like a close-up shot, and then like, let's try it further away, let's change the lighting, and you're stood in a freezing cold warehouse and you're thinking, gosh, this is taking forever. But it's not until you see how they've edited that all together, you're like, wow, like, I totally get why we just kept going back and doing that over and over. But yeah, so I thought it was interesting to see behind the scenes anyway, because it looks, when you watch something on TV, it just looks so sleek, and it's like half an hour or an hour, but behind that was a whole day of these poor Japanese guys freezing cold on a snowy day, and dragging all these cameras and equipment and light around, and yes, so much hard work behind the scenes, and then of course there's all the editing together as well. Yeah, just the whole process is fascinating. But we were interviewing. They were interviewing me with one of the warehouse guys, and we redid it a couple of times, and I just kept saying the same thing over and over. And the guy next to me didn't say anything until the very last take, and he just went, "All right, I agree with her." And I really hope they kept that bit in, because it was just hilarious and came out of nowhere. But I think it wouldn't translate very well on Japanese TV, because it probably need to be subtitled, to be honest. But yeah, I kind of totally appreciate that. It must just be quite a lot of sensory input to try and break down and put together again like a documentary format. So I'm really excited. I'm really excited to see the film, to see what you've done.
Happy to see it.
Yeah.
Was there any story or any part of the final production that you can tell us about that maybe didn't make it, that you thought, I'm really sad to leave that bit out?
God, there was something right at the end. There was some new interview, and I'm trying to remember the specifics of it, where it was a really interesting, it was almost kind of a one-off interesting point. And I'm trying to remember what the point was. And we're like, oh, that would be interesting. But we knew it was just too divergent to, you couldn't just throw the one line in, because it would raise too many questions.
Yeah.
And especially that late in the process, where it would not only take off of the main, structure, but also, would need to be further explored. And we just, had to say, no, that's something else. I'm trying to remember exactly what it is at this point. But it was, maybe if we had come across that earlier, if it had been earlier, it was a new interview, relatively recent interview. So we just didn't have it wasn't something like, oh yeah, that's a point we should have investigated. It was like, we just didn't have it before then. And, so we just didn't have a chance to investigate it further. So if we had that person earlier and come across that point, we could have maybe worked it into the overall structure, but it was not only too late in the process, to build it out, but also it would have been would have been a tangent that would have been tough to bring back around. And I just blanking at the moment in the specifics, but it was the timing of it that made it so stand out. I was like, that's interesting. Could we do something with that? I mean, we just don't have anything else to back it up or to flesh it out.
Yeah, just too big a can of worms to put together, I guess. Yeah, and that's the beauty of whiskey, isn't it? You think you're finally putting your finger on a process or an idea or a theory, and then you discover something and it blows it out of the water, and okay, so let's go back to square one again.
Or taste something that's just so so different that you just never, even from something you would have expected from a distillery, or a bottler or a finish or the combination of, and then just for that one unique is just sends you on a whole nother world.
100%. So you're a whiskey fan before you came into this process, or is it?
Yes. So it's become much bigger since. You think you know something beforehand, and then once you get even go into this, it becomes much deeper.
Yeah, I bet it's opened up a world of a lot of different types of whiskey for you to try, which is not a bad place to be in, especially with independent bottlers. It's opening up a whole new world as well. It's a lot of fun.
Oh yeah.
Have you got anything in your glass tonight, or are you off? Are you not drinking tonight because you're working, or do you have a dram tonight?
Well, actually, right before we came over here, Rob, who I mentioned, and Alphonse, another one of the producers, and I were at Holyrood Distillery.
Fantastic.
So, but then we're in Greg's room, and so
he's not there. So help yourself. Look out for it. He's got
we have open right now. Actually, I did the self fill. I really liked the single cast self fill that I had there, so I have that, but it's sealed up for my trip back to California. So not breaking that open at the moment.
# room service. He's not there.
Put it on his bill.
He's not
I will
watching.
probably have something afterwards when I'm not in his room because who knows? I don't know what's here anymore. So
I'm just Willis is just asking what's in my bottle. I just poured the Walt whiskey. So this is a 16-year-old Orkney Highland Park in a brandy cask. I think this was of the first Mark. If Mark's still watching, it's very rare that I have the joy of getting 2 bottles. This one was gifted to me by Jeremy when he came over. So Jeremy was part of our whiskey academy that we run, and took this over. Now, being in the industry of buying a lot of bottles and selling a lot of bottles, when you find something that's really special, stand out, you always look for that second.
of course.
But I very, very seldom get that opportunity because by the time I finish one bottle, there's so much more stuff on the go. So it's great to be able to go back to.
And if it's a single cask, I mean, the chances are very low.
Exactly. Yeah, it's gone. Yeah. So Marcus, to say it was the first ever cask. I think it was when we signed up for the Whiskey Buds before you even bottled anything. Was it Mark, or you were looking at that setup? This is my second bottle of the Orkney 16-year-old, 59.1%. So that's got a bit of a kick. I should have worn my What Buds t-shirt tonight as well.
Well, Mark,
And
since I know you're on, you just wrote our first ever cast. I look forward to meeting you as well tomorrow. I was on a virtual tasting with you during the pandemic, which I believe was 7 Grand's Spirit Guide Society tasting, if I remember correctly, who was doing that one. But that was 3 or 4 years ago. 4 years ago now, I guess. Time flies since the pandemic, right?
I know.
It's in the UK. It's in 2 weeks' time. It'll be 5 years since the first lockdown.
No way. So you're right, because my phone memories popped up of me and your wife heading off to Isla for work. We were working and we got back like 2 weeks before like the whole country just closed. That we could have been stuck on Isla. Imagine, that was like worst places to be stuck for.
You dodged a bullet.
I was over here right before. I was here for Christmas and Hogmanay in 2019 with my whole family, and so and we got terribly sick about 2 weeks later. So we've always wondered if we actually caught COVID coming back, and it was before anyone actually knew what it was. So we weren't tested or anything. We didn't know, but the timing was very weird, and we were very, very ill. About 2 weeks after we got back from here, but we had a lovely time.
When I was in Isla, I had a really bad chest infection. Like I was coughing and coughing and coughing, and everyone was at that stage where like it still wasn't that serious, so they kept like laughing, saying, "Oh, she's got the new flu," like ha ha ha, look at her coughing her lungs up. And then so got home. And then, like they're like, okay, the whole world's shutting down, guys. I was terrified that I had killed the whole of Isla. Like I was like one of these super spreaders. And I watched the news and I kept looking at the map to see if anybody in Isla had COVID. And it wasn't until right towards the end of the pandemic that somebody in Isla had COVID. I was like, thank God. Imagine if I just wiped out the whole of the whiskey region, Isla. I would have been the most hated woman in the country. But luckily it was just a chest infection and we were fine. I wasn't a super spreader. But yeah, like yourself, you start wondering, you're like, what if that was, crazy times. But
we have Mark Watt was saying you're talking about that tasting with Mark. He was quite drunk when he was hosting that tasting. I don't want to throw out a stereotypical picture of Mark, but I don't think that's uncommon.
To see if he responds to that.
I want to know, so your bottle there, it's got an orange label.
Yes.
Is this what we mean by Mark's branding with his synesthesia, which I can't say with my lisp? So like each bottle would have a different coloured label.
I think so, because that's the first smell. Because I think he smells colours, Mark does.
So he's like a flash of colour is what I think they were talking about on my LinkedIn the other day. New to LinkedIn, guys, check me out. Moving with the times. but yeah, so I didn't know this was the thing because it's, yeah, so it smells orange to him. Yeah, so like, oh my God, I found my people. So like, this is literally how I operate. And all throughout school and uni, I thought I was just weird because like I'd see numbers in color, and I'd do all my notes in color. And then it wasn't until Mike and on the Blether and stuff started talking about it, I was like, yeah, this must be like other people too. And there's this little community of synesthesiasts, which is very, very cool. I think I made that word up, but you know, web.
I don't think that's not a really catchy phrase.
Hashtag synesthesiasts. No, it's not really. But yeah, it's such a cool quirk of the brain that it does that. It's very cool.
And just to emphasize, that doesn't mean Mark thinks it smells like an orange. It smells, you know, the color.
The color.
Yeah. Yeah, it's probably the worst example because now people are thinking of oranges.
Yeah.
But you know, you get a green sense or a red or whatever.
Yeah,
you know.
See, because you say orange, and I wouldn't automatically think it smells like orange because, like, yeah, it's not. Yeah, it just, I don't know. It's hard to explain, but I'm glad there's other people out there that. This is why I cannot buy colored clothes pegs. It messes with my brain because I want the two colors to match, you know, two blue pegs, and then I want them to make sense to match the color of the clothes. I just can't do it. I just don't have that amount of time.
So Nick, unfortunately, you're sitting in the seat at the time where Kat has this little, what we call a Blether moment where she's
I just go for a rant for a while,
off on a tangent. You know, I mean, if you want to discuss your own personal quirks, please feel free to throw them. What was your favorite part of the whole process of the film? If you had to pick one moment that you're like, you know what, this is why I do what I do, what was it?
I mean, this was interesting because obviously how we shot it was, you know, we weren't all on set because, you know, we started with the footage, which admittedly not, you know, we said, oh, we've got 3/4 of a film here. And now that's a tiny percentage of what's actually in there. And then, you know, Guy Satchwell was shooting here. And so, you know, the production end was a little bit unusual. You know, I mean, in terms of, you know, production, meaning where the shooting versus the post-production. So, you know, for us, it was all, you know, our perspective is very much, you know, all is, you know, sometimes you get the global scope of, you know, each stage, and here it was, you know, all when we were in the editing room. I think, you know, because we were working with a team of editors. And, you know, we had, because we worked with an editing school, actually. And so, you know, Greg, Rob, and I were overseeing them as, you know, as producers / story editors, as supervising editor / producer, and Greg as director. And, you know, we're working with these, you know, students as in various editing teams. And the moment when they start, well, there's two things. When they you know, the fact that they just captured our love for the whiskey, and immediately many of them were starting to go out and buy and experiment and learn about whiskey themselves, and how often they captured our passion, and they were excited by our passion, and, you know, and how much they've told us about that throughout the way. You know, like they loved this because, you know, they could see our love and they just wanted to do more because of that. And so that, you know, that meant a lot that we're passing that on. And so that was really meaningful. But the, you know, the moment, and it was all about the same time of all the different episodes from, you know, from a more, you know, talking from the more specifically the film standpoint, where all of a sudden they got it, and you could see all of a sudden their edits were hitting that new next level. And, you know, so there was the moment from the whiskey standpoint, and there's just the overall love of the combination of film and whiskey, but then specifically from the film standpoint, where, you know, all of a sudden they could see how this worked and how this came together, and, you know, because it was specifically a class revolved around documentaries, which is not always the thing that's, taught, more of narrative taught. And so when they, they could see all of a sudden, okay, this is how it works. And that moment was really exciting, because not only did the edits become, tighter and tighter, but, just seeing that, they suddenly stood this, the specific form of filmmaking and how it came together was really wonderful.
Nice. So has it always been the dream to make these types of like docu-films and things like that? Was that like the sort of start goal when you set out in your kind of career path, or is it kind of diverged into what you do now?
It was actually a divergence. Most of my career has been narrative, and I still have some narrative projects as well. But Water of Life started when Greg was on his 10th wedding anniversary in Scotland, and said he wanted to make something about that. And then, of course, he came back and asked all of us to be involved. About the same time, I had come up with a project of my own, which was a very experimental documentary that I was directing. It was a short. It was actually animated. So it was an experimented animated documentary short, talk about a weird combination of things. And that's where I would talk about, and this is one of the few ones where it was highly structured from beginning to end. So as I said, sometimes they do fall that way because it was very historical. So for me, documentaries, it was all of a sudden I was working on 2 documentaries at once, and it was something not where most of what I worked on had ever been before, but I do love it. And it's, documentaries are, I will always love narrative storytelling too, don't get me wrong, but there's something very meaningful about documentaries, because you're capturing life, and you're capturing something that happens, and you're capturing, and not only you're explaining it to the world, but you're capturing it for posterity too. So there's something, very meaningful in that, which is, and still can be storytelling, but I know Greg and I are both fans of a lot of directors. Werner Herzog is one who jumps between narrative and documentary, and we love that, the sense of bringing that narrative storytelling to the documentary sphere, as opposed to their, some of the more news and journalistic types are can be very dry. I mean, it can be important information, but it can be very dry and very news story. Like we definitely always want that storytelling sense. Both of us come from that kind of school to it, and Greg too comes from narrative first. So we definitely try to bring that element to that. So
I think a lot of Scottish culture is storytelling. Like a lot of the Gaelic and sort of the like Doric, our dialect we speak up here, it's all oral. So to capture like these really important stories in a sort of, a narrative sort of format as a documentary film, I think it's like a beautiful kind of full circle of that kind of whole heritage of Scotch and Scotland and what it is and storytelling. So yeah, I think that's fantastic, bringing together of the two sides. It's really nice. I like that.
It's a full circle. I mean, obviously the earliest storytelling traditions were oral traditions. So,
especially with dram in hand, a lot of good stories start coming out the more drams are had as well. So they quite often seem to go hand in hand.
Yes.
A lot of good stories happen after a few drams have happened.
Yes.
A lot of the best ideas.
Triggers. Or more than the dram in hand, maybe 2 or 3.
No, for sure.
Yeah, I don't know if you know the story about, so talking of great ideas and great stories of over at Dram, and back in the center. This is something I discovered recently through my favorite podcast about random facts. The guys who invented edible underwear were having a dram and having a smoke, got rather stoned, and started discussing the phrase "eat my shorts," and came up with the idea for edible underwear. The first pair were made out of licorice, apparently. So random fact for you. And all the best ideas come after a dram, surely. And if
that's
that doesn't
very specific industry.
It really is. I love how my chat about synesthesia you classed as my usual midway rant, and you're on to edible underwear. Mine LinkedIn.
So did mine. That linked into drunken ideas that became an actual thing.
That's true. Nearly every single week in the Blether, we do come up with an idea that we think is the best idea in the world that we should patent, and then the next
Whiskey
day we're like,
flavored edible underwear. Now there's a market.
there you go. So next premiere of the next film, that's your sort of your branding material. You're going to go for branded edible whiskey flavored. So it's very niche, but you know you'll be the only ones doing it.
Poor Nate is like, why was I next in line? Why was I sitting so close to Greg that I had to sit in the seat now? I do apologize. Okay, we're going to get back to a serious.
Yeah, Jeremy's asked some questions. We've got some questions flying in, so we should start asking some questions.
So Jeremy Watt has asked, how do you balance the planning of the storytelling and themes for somebody new to whiskey against experienced drinkers? I guess because that's such a diverse audience that we're talking to. On the face of it, it's all whiskey drinkers, but you go into it and we have a whole...
is a very, very challenging bit. I will say off the top, Independent Spirits is definitely more towards your experienced drinkers. And, obviously independent bottling as a whole is an area of whiskey that tends to be more for your experienced drinkers. Yes. So this is definitely a bit more of a whiskey geek kind of project than Water of Life was. Water of Life is definitely more balanced because, as much as it is about whiskey, it's about Isla, it's about the people. It's and I know people, I've talked to many people who aren't whiskey drinkers and who absolutely love the film. But yes, Independent Spirits is definitely more towards the experienced drinkers. But even then, it's not just about whiskey. It's about the people. And it's about the craft, and that's something that anyone can connect to. And so from that standpoint, it can still appeal to, because it's not necessarily appealing to, in that point, to a whiskey drinker of any level. It's about drinking to humanity and, what drives us and people. And so, and that's where you have to find the balance. But definitely, depending on the nature of the project, it's going to shift more one side or the other, but there is a balance too. And of course, our editing team, most of our editing team did not have whiskey experience coming in. And
I guess,
learning it.
Is it kind of handy because they're seeing it without a prior knowledge, so they can just make quite rational decisions of, yeah, I like the way he spoke, or I like the way she spoke, or I like that point. Whereas if you're a bit of a whiskey geek, you're like, yeah, but that's not super relevant to what that question was. Like, I guess it's nice to have both sides of the spectrum of like the ones with whiskey knowledge who can provide that input, but also the ones who are like, yeah, but like he was just a bit better camera than that person. I guess you need that balance to create an all-round documentary.
That's a that's a good point. I haven't thought about the way. I mean, we were definitely teaching him about whiskey too. But yeah, it can give an outside perspective, which, some of us, that's, for anything, an outside perspective is good. Any creative project, you can be so immersed or so within your own knowledge that, that's why when we, in filmmaking, after you've done your first level cut, you show it to some other people because you need those other perspectives to say, hey, is this working as we think it is? And so, fresh eyes are always, beneficial.
Yeah, it does. It's quite interesting you mentioned, because kind of I would say a comparison for us is if somebody books into us for a premium whiskey tasting. So automatically I start thinking single cask strength, slightly older. But for the people who are booking a premium, I think, well, I don't like cask strength. Oh, that's very strong. And they're looking maybe kind of distillery bottles, 18, 21-year-old at 40, 43, 46%. So we have to then teach ourselves to step back and say, like, what exactly is it that this person's looking for? What's premium for us is limited, it's single cask, but for them, it's the opportunity to purchase or to taste drink that's maybe out of the price market in a bottle. So yeah, that step back, or that, like you say, that outsider's opinion on what the story you're telling. Is quite
exactly. There's always someone beyond our knowledge too. However, we know, talking to distillers and bottlers, the real whiskey experts, but someone who's neophyte will consider, it's like there's a whole, wherever we fall on the spectrum, there's always somebody, on either side, and you have to try to see where from their eyes and realize where you stand relative. And I know exactly what you mean.
That's good. So I'm just catching up with some of the comments. Mark's got to go. He'll see us in Edinburgh. So thank you very much, Mark, for joining and commenting here. It's always great to hear from guys in the industry. Yeah, absolutely.
Jeremy, I think there'd have to be a peated limited edition. You actually have to have a Highland peat and an Isla peat.
Are we back to the underwear?
Yes, it sounds like it.
I love that this has actually just grown arms and legs, and people are seriously considering the the whiskey flavored edible.
I think we've started something. I love Mark's comment. He's saying he's worried about having to smell what color they would be.
That's when you don't want synesthesia in your life, I guess.
You would have to smell them pre-worn, wouldn't you?
Well, do you know what? There's a market for both things. Hashtag no judgment. Like, if you can sell pictures of your feet, you can definitely market worn whiskey flavored underwear. Girls got to make some money. That's all I'm saying.
There was so Danny Hebington has asked, and I was going to try and expand on this about the the original movie. You did a lot of tastings and you got people involved in kind of virtual events, probably done as a direct reaction to COVID, I think, because we weren't able to get out there and whatnot. Is there plans to kind of follow that process where we invite independent bottlers in? Maybe us as a shop can make a tasting pack of indie bottlers, send it to their customers, and get guys like Mark, like Andrew, like these guys on and do a wee tasting with yourself or Greg or Rob.
Absolutely. We plan on doing that. Obviously, we love doing them in person, but virtual, will be part of it too. Each circumstance, is unique, so it works for the specific situation. But absolutely, we want to, we thought that it was a format that was initially came about out of necessity, obviously, considering the time when we launched Water of Life, but it really worked. It really worked well, and we want to continue that. So
it was a fascinating way of bringing people together, wasn't it? Because without COVID, and let's try and look on the silver lining of the whole global thing of it, we would never dream of getting Billy Walker, Stephen Rankin, Charlie McLean, and Rachel Barry in the same room for a tasting event. It's that's months and years of planning and logistics. Whereas we do it virtually, it's an hour of their time, and they're sitting at home. They log in, they give their time, and they log out again. It was such a phenomenal kind of groundbreaking way of whiskey tasting, and getting access to these guys without too much. I know it was a lot of effort, but it was nowhere near the effort of getting them in the same room together.
Yeah.
Well, necessity is the mother of invention, right? I mean, so it worked because of the time, and now it's something that will, I think everything is going to go forward. There's that element will always be something that people will use, because it makes things possible that, I mean, obviously the possibility didn't exist in the past, but now that the possibility has been realized and understood what the possibility could be, there's no reason not to utilize it.
100%.
You're so true. There's a great way of bringing together communities as well, though, because you just need to look at the chat in the corner there. Like, a lot of these guys just all know each other through whiskey tastings and through joining the Blether and also joining Aquavite, which is on after us. And it's like a lovely little virtual friendship. Like, that is off the back of what we developed during COVID, which I think is really, really cool. You might never actually meet these people, or you might bump into them finally at a festival, like on Saturday. You're like, oh my God, you're the guy off the chat. You were like, whatever their sort of names are. I was just going to say Jeremy Watt, but I know that's your real name. I was trying to find somebody's made up name on there, but this is all just people's real names. Jeremy, I know that's your real name. But yeah, I mean, like, there's not many other hobbies or interests that you can do. Like, this is quite unique, Okay, if you're into golf, you watch golf on the TV, you might go to the odd like open day, but you very rarely get to sit and watch like a weekly live golf festival. And I don't know why I chose golf. I'm going down a rabbit hole because I know nothing about golf. But like, where else do you get to do this? Like, it's quite a unique setting, the whiskey world. So it's kind of cool. Yeah, I don't know why I chose golf. I just totally got lost there in a golfing analogy. And I'm Scottish. I meant to know a little bit about golf.
I love it. If you want to know fully about Kat's golf knowledge, Nate, you should go back and watch that the Blether with Neil Strachan.
Nobody needs to rewatch that. I know nothing about golf. No, nobody needs to go back and watch it. Yeah, we just let's never make the Blether about sport, okay? Just tapping out.
How long are you in Scotland for, Nate? What's your plans while you're here?
I leave on the 18th, so 1 week.
Okay. So you're here for a while.
Obviously, with all the stuff around here for the festival and the screenings, I am this time just going to be in Edinburgh. So obviously, Greg's doing a lot more, but I'm just going to be in the city.
So do you come back to Scotland often? Is it because you said you were here pre-COVID for Hogmanay? Is it like a place you like to come to? Have you got like kind of family roots or heritage in Scotland?
My wife does. If I do, it's my Viking roots. So if the Vikings who came down through Orkney, I may have some. But my wife does have among her. We're both mutts. Has Scottish roots. So we just love. I mean, we love to travel. We got 2 kids, so we try to change it up for them too. So
nice. How old are your kids? Do they still like coming with mom and dad?
Oh, they love traveling. They're 15 and just about to turn 13. So.
Okay, yeah, I've got 17, 15, and 12. So in between your ones, but they are fast realizing that I'm the most boring person in the world, and they don't want to come anywhere with me. So yeah. You're lucky that your ones want to come with you. It must be quite cool for them to see dad making documentary films and telling the kids at school that's what their dad does. That'd be quite a cool thing for them to talk about.
I mean, in LA, especially the schools in the area, every other parent is. And mom's was most recently an executive at Paramount, and a VP of production for Paramount Animation. So they just they're growing up. But being in film is not. And my older daughter in her high school is in a cinema arts program. So. It's just
grow up with it, don't they? It's
the kind of thing where you're outside the industry, like, oh my gosh, it's amazing, and they just, oh, that friend of ours is we have a friend, one of our Alphonse is over here. I was blowing over here because our friend Amber, like, oh, Amber's famous, like, just because like
you can't walk around with her.
Yeah, so like but they're like, she's like an aunt to them. So it's their perspective is really, really, really skewed.
Yeah, I can imagine that'd be a bit different. It's like my kids think it's normal for a mother to have shed loads of alcohol in their living room, but in Scotland that is kind of normal for a lot of families too, but different reasons. Mine's professional.
It's in the cold, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, you get used to what don't you?
Definitely.
Yeah, it's a bizarre concept for us over here with almost no movie heritage. You know, we've got our own little kind of Scottish film culture and stuff, but where you guys are, you grow up with it, you live, you breathe it. It's why people move there, I guess, in a lot of ways.
Yes.
Yeah, it must have become so normal. What was that?
Alphonse went suckers. I moved out.
I'm one of them.
Yeah, we all moved out for that very reason. So
Yeah, but you're here doing what you love and combining two passions to create this story for hundreds, if not thousands, of people at home to watch and enjoy. So
it is great, merging the passions in that way. It's and I think documentaries in particular they give you that capability.
Is it the same crew from the Water of Life film that's doing now? Is everyone the same, or have you brought in new people? Or
it's mostly the same. I mean, there's a couple people because one of our producers moved away, so he hasn't been less involved, and obviously there's new people involved. But for the majority, most of us are the same group. And we're all really good friends outside of here too, and we're working with friends.
So you're literally living your best life. You're working with a group of pals doing your two favorite things. I mean, like that doesn't really get much better than that. Like we should all hate you, to be honest. Like
it's a nice thing if you tell if you could go back and tell high school or college stuff, yeah, you're doing this, you'd be like, yeah, whatever. That's you're doing all that, and it's coming.
It's great. I get to travel the world, drink whiskey, and make films.
That's not too shabby.
That's not too bad. Well, yeah, we're very excited about coming to see this film. It's going to be absolutely awesome. And for anybody that hasn't seen the first one, that's still accessible as well, right? In the same sort of platforms that this new film is going to be on. Like you can still. Okay, so everybody can just go and kind of watch the first one before they head down and do the second one on Saturday if they haven't already seen it, which is good to know. But obviously very different ideas, but same crew. Yeah. So
I started watching it on Tuesday night, I think. No, Monday night. I started watching it to remind myself for tonight in case we needed to dip into any of the Water of Life chat tonight. I didn't get all the way through it, but I'm going to watch it again tonight. Just to warm myself up for the weekend
on Saturday.
Yeah. Can't wait. It's going to be so cool. Nate, I realized that you've jumped in for Greg, and we thank you so much. You've actually been on the Blether longer than Greg was, which is
it's been fun.
Thank you for having both.
I don't know if you want to go grab yourself a break if somebody else wants to jump in, or what you guys want to do, because I know you guys are over here.
We don't want to take your time because we're so grateful that you've given up your time. Honestly, like it's awesome that you're literally just in a hotel room giving up your time just before you go live for the premiere. So we're very grateful. We don't want to be pushing our luck.
We appreciate you having us and letting us talk about it. So thank you very much.
Half these people in the chat are going to be at the festival as well, so you're going to be inundated with people who recognize you and want to come and say hello. So I hope you're okay with that.
Absolutely. I said I'm a little more difficult to find than Greg, but I'm still taller than most. So
as long as you wear that scarf and hat, people will find you because they'll recognize you.
Okay.
And I'm coming with a step ladder already, so you're getting hugged also. So that step ladder is there for Greg. So
okay.
Quick shout so the guys who are watching at home, if you've got any other questions, please fire them in, and we'll see if we can get them answered before Nate heads off. And if you are going to the festival, let us know who you're most like or looking forward to. I think it's about 40 exhibitors.
I think Greg said 49. I'm not sure what the count is. There is a lot, is all I know.
That's amazing.
And these guys pretty much do nothing but cask strength whiskey, so you have to be careful here.
Yeah,
there's not going to be try everything there. That would be a very, very dangerous
it
situation.
definitely would. Yeah, I think go in with a plan, skirt the room first, and then decide what you're going back to try. A lot of it's just chatting, though, isn't it? You just see people that you want to meet or have met before. So a lot of it
even trying one at every table would be challenging, let alone every expression.
I mean that's pretty much a bottle of whiskey in 4 hours, which
a bottle of cask strength whiskey. That's bad.
Yeah. I remember I went to a festival in Aberdeen. It's a few years now ago. It was the last festival I went to. And I just went as a punter. I paid my ticket. I went in. But because I knew so many people behind the stalls, I think I only drank between 3 and 5 whiskeys in a 3-hour session of like 40 exhibitors, 30 exhibitors, whatever it was. And I was like, I did not get my money's worth for that because in terms of drink, but made so many connections and chatted to a lot of people that you don't get a chance to speak to, which is, as you mentioned earlier, Nate, it's the the people and the sharing the stories and that, which is as much of the industry and the story of whiskey as the drink itself.
Well, the social element's definitely part of it.
Yeah,
I'm being summoned over for something I need to handle. No,
we can let you go. Thank you so much for your time, and we'll look forward to seeing the film.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Both appreciate it so much.
It's been an absolute blast. And
let's have a drink.
Yeah, we're going to let you head off. Slange.
Okay, Slange.
Thank you. Wow.
There we go. That was absolutely awesome. I can't believe we got that together just before they premiere the film. How exciting was that? That buzzing after that. That was great. So excited to be down to the festival.
We've got Peathead is comment just in time for you're a little bit late when Kat was scouring the chat for a nickname. So Peathead is going. He's Frank, so you know. He said thanks for the insight. Looking forward to meeting during the festival. Yeah, I'll be the slightly shorter bearded version of Greg. When I say slightly shorter, it's about a foot shorter.
I'll be the even shorter, non-bearded, hairy version of you all.
Non-bearded and hairy. That's quite a combination.
And also female. That's the key. That's the key to the difference there. Yeah, how amazing! Like the whole festival is based around independent bottlers. Like 49 different exhibitors, like a premiere of film. Like David and Keith. I think Keith was busy tonight with he was in earlier, but they put together something absolutely amazing. Like they should be very proud of themselves. So excited to see it all come. And I have written down all our train times on an old envelope, like a little old Nana. So we are going to be on it and there on time because we have to get to that film premiere in time.
Yeah, we have to be there 15 minutes early. Willis is going to be watching Leeds United rather than the film. I don't think that's through choice because nobody really chooses to watch Leeds, do they, Willis? So it's nearly as good as. It's a football reference, Kat. Don't worry.
It's like my ears just turn off. It's like a different type of synesthesia. So you need to mention football. It's like my brain shuts down. It's like, no.
So Frank, aka Petehead, is 6'5" and bearded. So, we won't miss him.
There's just a lot of large, hairy men on the go.
You are going to be in your element.
I really am. You're all getting hugged. Just saying. Yeah. What's in the water?
What's in the what?
In the water. Like, how's everyone so tall?
Yeah. So guys, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm really surprised to say this. This has been a rather short Blether, only an hour and 45 minutes.
I know, but we've fitted in a lot. Like I feel like it's short in duration but long in content. So it's been a lot of fun, and like the chat's been amazing on the side there, guys, as well. So well done for that. Thank you very much. It's cool. And I see that hi Russell. I see that the VPub guys have decided have got guests on tonight. So
Yeah, this was what my last dram was. Just
I
poured
love
it.
that.
Thompson Brothers, the peated blend SRV5. So yeah, if you're watching Aquavita after, they're talking to Phil and Simon about
Yeah.
who's
They
still
also-
building. I mean, not at all influenced by last week's Blether, when we're talking about new distillery.
Imitation's the highest form of flattery, is all I'm saying. Whiskey Dave is asking, where is the festival? So it's in Leith, but I think, is the festival ticket sold out as well, or is it just the film is sold out? I think they were saying everything's
Greg
sold
was
out.
saying
isn't
this
it?
morning at the start, that the festival's now sold out as well. So I know if you look if you're on Aquavite Facebook page or any kind of Facebook page that's based in Scotland about whiskey, there's some people who can't make it and are throwing out their tickets. Some are just giving away for free and they'll send you the email. So have a scout if you haven't got a ticket. You might be able to get one. I don't think it's going to be to the level of ticket touts at the door, but ping a message onto the group chats on Facebook saying, has anyone got a ticket? And I'm sure you might be able to get it done. Russell Brinklow, hello. I did see your comment up earlier on, Russell. We didn't get around to chatting to you straight away. But he's saying the G&M stall is where you need to be. G&M, I've never heard of they must be quite new, are they?
Are they like some sort of like startup or something?
Must be. So it's always great to support the small indies at these kind of events.
So I take it we're going to see Russell at the festival as well, so we'll look out for you.
Yeah.
We'll come and
we'll have a wee
you.
Blether past and present.
Yeah. Under the table drams will be sorted out for us though, right, Russell? Mates and all that. We'll get some good drams sorted.
Yeah, that'll be good. And it would be great to catch up because obviously Russell's down there to do a job, but maybe afterwards catch up and have a dram in a pub somewhere. And I can't see Leith being a quiet place to go to at 8 o'clock on Saturday night.
I am going to have to pace myself. Because based on last festival I went to, that's lessons learned. Yeah, but I get to stay over, so it's going to be a lot of fun.
I was hoping Russell would offer me a couch in his hotel room, but he hasn't done that yet. So
chaise Russell, have you got a chaise for Mike to recline on? There's an image. You reclined on Russell's chaise in a hotel room somewhere. It's probably an image I could do without, but it's in my head now. It's in my head. I haven't even been drinking.
My edible underwear on.
Oh, yep, that is in my head. That is in my head. What color is that going to be? So many colors.
Sometimes you think, when it's just you and me, it's normally the after chat and you forget you're live.
Still live.
I'm not the only one. Jeremy thought the same. Jeremy's popped on in the edible on it.
Yeah. Jeremy's in that velvet armchair watching the whole thing unfold. Yep. On the same wavelength.
Whiskey Dave is giving away his age a wee bit. He's saying he needs to start booking 2 nights off for recovery.
Yeah, I know. It's going to be a lot of fun though. It's very, very exciting, and we might see some of you guys there. Definitely come and find us if you are down at the festival. Come and say hello, and
100%.
Let us know you're a Bletherin.
Please do.
Yeah, it's always nice people come. Go on.
Yeah, I was going to ask, do we have a guest for next week?
We do. So I've left my diary in the car, but I was trying to work it out on memory, and I'm 98% sure we have Keith Cruikshank.
Awesome.
Yes, I'm sure he's down for the 20th.
I'm
just 100% sure.
To Colburn Distillery, 30 years at Ben Romich, give or take, I think, and now at Colburn.
Yeah.
In a move that
he was at the Whiskey Talks with us as well.
he was.
Yeah.
That's going to be really cool because that was a move that nobody. I can't fathom that. You know, spending 30 years somewhere and then getting the chance to, because his name's in all the balls as well. That's
yeah.
There's a branding headache for the guys.
Loads of eye rolling in the finance and marketing department there. Right, okay.
Just rebranded the bottles, Keith, for God's sake.
I know they'll have to maybe just I don't know, try and cover over it with something, but
I guess it's still his liquid. He still batched it. He's still
yeah, so that's true. No, that is true. I mean, like, you know, distillery exclusives don't need to be because, you know, the person's still there. Like, it's like we're trying to offload Corneli's bloody Dram at the distilleries. But he spoke so well at Whiskey Talks. He's just got such a lovely, easy Aberdeenshire kind of, just a lovely kind of down to earth way of talking. So it'd be great to have him on the Blether. And also, his wife runs my hair salon, so check me. Lovely connections. Might get some discount off my next haircut.
Oh, Russell's shots fired. G&M reject. I hope we are talking about Keith there.
Oh right, sorry. I thought we're on to I thought we're back on the chaise lounge. She hasn't even picked up on the chaise lounge. But
yeah, Russell, come on. I mean, you're an IWS reject if you're going to get picky.
And on that cheery note, do you know what? It's all love in the community. It's all love in the community.
Yeah, absolutely. So, guys, I'm going to be jumping on to the Aquavita because I'm really interested to see what the Thompson brothers have to say about new distilleries. It's going to be really interesting. So hopefully I'll see some of you on there. Russell, really looking forward to seeing you on Saturday. It'd be great to catch up. Hopefully this time we'll manage a drink afterwards as well.
100%.
Frank, really looking forward to seeing you. And yeah, it's going to be great fun. I'm going to sign off with I had a dream not too long ago about being at the Whiskey Festival, and the morning after I woke up in the doorway of Diggers in my kilt, which I never wear to festival, but there was social media videos of me dancing in Diggers in my kilt, and this was my dream / nightmare. So hopefully that doesn't happen this
premonition. I'll make sure you get back on that train, don't you worry.
Please do.
So next week, tune in to find out what happened at the Leith Independent Bottler Festival.
So, awesome. Cheers, guys. Thank you very much. We'll see you all soon.